Hey everybody! Are you there? Today we are gonna make paper clay embellishments. Woohoo! So most of the time people who I've seen making embellishments with clay, it's usually polymer clay, and I'm okay with that, and I've done some with that, but I rather do them with paper clay because it seems to be less time consuming. The paper clay is easier to work with. It's not really hard. So like if you don't have all the materials for the regular polymer clay, you know, it's going to be hard on your fingers to try to get it smooth out. And so I decided to do it with paper clay. And I've used paper clay to make jewelry before, so it came from that idea into the embellishment section. So you're gonna have to use, anyway, the paper clay is good because it air dries, it absorbs the colors really well because it's paper clay, and it's way faster to work with, and you can do whatever it is that you want. And if you glaze it, it's more of a permanent feel, which is how I used to do it for my jewelry, or protect it with a coating of like resin or something. And that way, even glossy accents actually would work if you're gonna, maybe not for jewelry, but no, it can work for jewelry too. It's just not gonna be as pretty looking because if you get fingerprints on the glossy accents, it seems to like really catch it and you can really see it. So, but yeah, you can protect it with any of those things. And the best part is that you can spray glimmer mist them. So I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do today, which are, we're gonna make this owl from a mold, and I actually have it here, the one we're making. And you can actually, if you don't want it to be a solid color, you can go in there with acrylic paints, let it dry, or glimmer mist it first and then let it dry, and then go in with a paintbrush and paint on more details if you wanted to. But this is just what I'm showing you really quickly today, and these are not protected, so if you wanted to glaze them, and you can do the backside too if you're gonna be hanging it, if you wanted to glaze them, you would just paint on the glaze or dump it in the glaze and pull it back out and let it dry, or the epoxy too, the resin. And then this is the one that I really enjoyed making, and it's a little flower, and I just wanted to show you because you can make flowers, you know, for embellishments. Just make a whole bunch of them, leave them white, and then spray them for your project, whatever it is that you want your color to be for your project. But then that way you already have a whole bunch of them made and you don't have to wait for the drying process. And so this one I sprayed with one of my paints that I have on my store, and then I put it on the bottle cap. And this bottle cap I went through my Sizzix machine to get it flat like this. I punched the hole with the crocodile, and then I put 2 jump rings and a little piece of chain, and then I'm going to put a clasp at the end. And so this can hang from a mini really easily, and if you wanted to cover the back, you could. You can also, instead of putting a hole in anything, you can just put it flat on the front page of your mini or inside the pages or whatever. And so I really enjoyed making this one, and I love the color, how it turned out, because it was actually a combination of 2 colors. So like I said, we'll get going, and like I said, I'm only showing you up to this stage, but if you wanted to, after you try this, you could go in there with a paintbrush and paint on some more details. So let's get going, and yep, we're just gonna get started. Okay, so your first step is gonna be to take your paper clay out, and I'm using Creative Paper Clay. And this I found at Hobby Lobby. My Michaels doesn't carry it anymore. It used to, because that's where I used to get it, but yours might, so you can check that. Take a little chunk of it off, enough for your mold. And I'm using a homemade mold, a flexible one. If you're using a mold that's made out of maybe plastic or something, you're going to have to be more careful when you pull it out. But other than that, it's the same thing. And so I'm taking a little chunk and I'm working it in my hands for a little while. Paper clay does dry pretty quickly though, so you want to work a little bit fast. So I'm going to take it, and since my mold is a little long, I made it into a longer, like, oval shape, and then I'm going to press it down and try to get it evenly on there. once I think that I got it evenly in the back in there, I'm gonna press it against my surface. And my hands are all chalky from the paper clay. It does leave residue on your hands, so, you know, wash your hands afterwards or it'll get on your clothes. And then I'm gonna put my finger in the middle, and I'm gonna, with my thumb, I'm gonna lift up so that I don't mess up my mold, which, yep, it came out okay. And this is how it's going to look. These edges here I leave on because when it dries, they tend to curl up, and that means that the center is usually a little bit flatter. So you're going to be cutting around them and then just filing them down. But you can take them off if you want with this X-Acto knife at this stage. Which I had one somewhere here. Oh. Like if you wanted to, you can do this. And just take off the edges. It's a little bit harder to do at this stage. I mean, they both require work, but if you do it at this stage, you could mess it up. I guess it's a good thing if you do it at this stage, because if you wait and then you mess it up, then you messed up your whole clay. And if you do it now, I suppose you can just make it back into a little ball and start all over since it's not dry. So go ahead and do this step. I usually wait, but I'm thinking it might be a better idea not to. We'll see once it dries if it was a good idea or not. And then this, put it back in your package right away, or it will get dry and it won't, I mean, you'll be able to use it, but it's just a different process. Especially if it gets too dry, then it might be a lot harder to use. Also, before it dries, after you take it out of your mold, I think I'm going to cut that little part off. If you want a flat embellishment, you are going to just leave it as it is. But if you want to use it for jewelry or as a charm, you're going to have to put a hole somewhere in your design. Now, mine had a built-in one because it was a charm, but it never comes out right. I've used this one many times and it always breaks off because if the paper clay is too thin, then it won't work. So I'm debating. Usually I like to use this one as a flat, or you can also attach a bail to the back of it with some epoxy glue. So if you want to just do that, you can kind of go with your fingers around it so that the rough edges are a little bit smoother. Okay. Ooh, hopefully that didn't damage it. Okay, and this is how it looks so far. And I don't know if you guys can tell, but my paper clay mold here has glitter because I didn't clean it out. But if you don't want to have any stuff, because it was from a different project, if you don't want to have that, then make sure you clean it off before you use it. But I don't mind. I'm going to color it anyway. Okay, and say you did want a hole up here. I'm just going to put one in there. You would pierce it right now before, and be careful not to mess up your mold, but you would do that hole right now. See if it focuses. I don't think it's gonna do it. Let me see. So that's how it looks right now. Well, and I know this owl usually looks better without as a flat embellishment, but as a charm it can also work. So now you're gonna let it dry overnight so that it's really rough, and then you'll get something like this. But we'll wait for that one to dry before we go to the next step. And see, this is the one I was talking about. If it's flat, then you can put it on the card. They do curl up, so halfway between the drying, if you are watching it, you can turn it over and then it'll go back the other way. But if you're not watching it, you'll get something like this. So anyway, we'll be back once that one dries. Okay, so we let this dry overnight, and mine's a little bit soft still on the back, but I'm gonna go ahead and show you. Just make sure that it's completely dry when you do it. So remember, we cut off the excess with our X-Acto knife. If you didn't do that, you're gonna have something that looks like this. And now what you would do is go around with scissors and cut around it as close as possible. And then once you do that, let me just show you really quick. It's easy to cut. Anyway, you can try to get into those little those little spots in there, but if you can't, then don't worry about it. Use a file, either a nail file, or if you have those cool little circular files, then that's perfect for this. But if you don't have it, then use a nail file and just try to file it down and get it to the shape that you want it. We actually cut it beforehand on this one, so if you have rough spots that you want to get rid of, sorry, I really am not having a good time today speaking. Anyway, if you have some rough spots here, then you can go through with the same, either with the file or with those circular files, and try to sand them down. So I'm just going to leave mine as it is. And then you have different options now, since it's supposed to be dry. You can either paint it with acrylic paints, or spray paint it with regular spray paint, or I don't know, whatever it is that you want to do. You can use your ink, your stamping ink. What I'm going to use is just some sprays, some color sprays, glimmer sprays that I made. And I'm going to spray this little owl. And here's the other one I think I showed you guys last time. So all I'm going to do is spray it, and then I'm going to dry it with the heat gun. Okay. So let me heat it up real quick, and we'll get going. Okay, it's not completely dry, so I'm going to put it next to it. And a tip that I always try to do so that I don't waste that ink, either have another project that you're working on, or if you have, like I said, I like using these photo printing papers, and I just put them upside down, and it gives it a lot of color in there. And I always have them handy so that I can do this and not just wipe it away. And then eventually, even if it's not a perfect mixture in my page, I can always punch out something and I'll have an interesting background to it. So, and then once I get most of it off, I just wipe the rest. So let's go back and finish drying that. And if you wanted to, you could spray different colors, like a variety of colors. This one was actually 2 colors, but the first one I didn't like as much, so I sprayed another one on top of it, and it looks almost like the last one that I sprayed, but it is a little bit different from what it would have been alone. And then this one, I'm just gonna leave it. I didn't dry the back. But anyway, that's basically all you would do if you just sprayed it. And so if you painted it or whatever, then you could you would have to let that dry. This you could use on your project flat, or you can put some charms and, you know, put some beads on here and string it. And anyway, I hope you guys like this video, and I hope that you have fun making these things, and come back next Thursday to watch the next Are You There Thursday episode. Thank you. Bye.